I've, and sorry about this. Let me get back up. Um, you can read this for yourself, and I won't do too much with it. This is just my opening screen. And I've been growing garlic for over 20 years, and I find that it's one of the easiest plants to grow. It also lends itself to taking a few cloves out of what you've just harvested and replanting, usually around the last of October in this area, unless you're at higher elevation. And I find that it's bugs don't like it, and the diseases, although there's quite a few listed, don't seem to be part of my crop. So if you find a disease, we're going to have a flyer online so you can look up what potentially might be wrong with your garlic. But in the 20 plus years, almost 25 years that I've been growing it, one of the things that I do is rotate crops, so that does help. But I have not found the diseases that they talked about or the bugs that they talked about in the garlic. And it may be that there's more diseases and critters that get after the garlic if you're mass planting in a commercial site or back in the East Coast than there are here in the Northwest, especially if you crop rotate. So that's just my experience, but I'd suggest that when we get done here, you go take a look at some of the flyers that Alice has put up online, and they're very helpful, and they're very informative. So with that, we'll get going a bit. And
hi.
Yeah.
I'd like to have the video recorded if that's possible.
It's being recorded.
Okay, and I'll get a link like a couple days from now.
Alice, that's yours.
If you email Gary, he'll send you the link. I can also put the link in the chat box for everybody, okay?
Billy, before I forget, at the end of this,
thank you.
It's called the Stinking Rose. There's a restaurant in Los Angeles called the Stinking Rose. Everything is made of garlic.
There's also one in San Francisco. It's the same restaurant. And
that was the original, I think.
Yeah. And before we get started too far, I'll tell you a little bit of a story with that. My husband and I went down to San Francisco and spent a few days there doing the touristy things. And one of the things that we did was go to the Stinking Rose because our hotel manager said, you've got to try this. So we went down, and they had a whole garland of garlic all the way around the restaurant. And this was not a tiny restaurant. This was like a warehouse type. And everybody was sitting at picnic tables and enjoying the garlic and each other's company. And we had 40 roasted garlic chicken. We had a sauteed garlic in olive oil to spread on the breads, and there was garlic mashed potatoes, and there was even garlic ice cream, but we couldn't go that far. By the time we got done, we understood what the taxi driver had said. He said, we will bring you down there, but nobody is going to pick you up and take you back. And we didn't reek of garlic, but we were giggling so hard, and so it was almost euphoric. And part of it was the atmosphere, but also I found out later, part of it's the garlic. It gives you an enhanced well-being feeling without all the side effects. And so we got home, and true to form, we couldn't smell each other's garlic, but we knew from the reaction of the hotel crew that it was coming through our pores and doing all of those wonderful things that garlic tends to do. So if you're ever in Los Angeles or San Francisco, take a side trip to the Stinking Rose.
They have a wonderful cookbook you can get too.
Oh yeah. And you can see it online. It's just a hoot. Anyway, garlic itself, if you've been reading the slide, we've been eating garlic for a very long time. And Middle Asia is Kazakhstan and those countries that change names every 100 years or so, started out this grand excursion with garlic that we've got and spread it to Egypt, and it was spread to the Mediterranean and to Asia, specifically China. So it got its start in Middle Asia, but for 7,000 years, we've been eating garlic. And when it was first discovered, it was not only culinary, but they also tended to use it as a medicinal type of vegetable. And because there were no penicillins or other pharmacies that we have now, it was originally called the Russian penicillin during World War I, because the Russians and other countries used it as a penicillin to help with respiratory infections and help with sores and other issues that they had during World War I, because we had no penicillin. In World War II, of course, penicillin shows up, but the Russians kept using the garlic because they could get it. It was, every backyard had it. It was cheap and it was effective. In the 1700s, the Black Plague of Marseille, France, was using garlic to offset or to reduce the Black Plague. And I think probably because it repels fleas and rodents, and that helped, especially if you're on the coast. You can read the rest. Cholera in 1913, typhoid fever and diphtheria in 1918. So there's a lot of usage of garlic around the world for staving off, not completely eradicating, or we'd hear about it, but staving off the effects and the potentials of a lot of our worser infections and bacteria and all of that. Spanish flu in 1918, they used a lot of garlic to stave off a lot of the Spanish flu. So it was used for pharmaceutical uses a lot. And there have been, even though MedMD, which I looked up a day or two ago, says there's no discernible proof that this works, there are in other areas. And some of the medical folks are coming around to the realization that you can't disprove something just because it's a folklore or it's a vegetable instead of a pharmaceutical. So they're doing a lot more studies on it, and they're finding a lot of interesting stuff with it. One of the things that I wanted to make sure you were aware of also is that the largest producer of garlic is China. 81% of the world's garlic production is in China. The largest US producer is California, and we were just talking about that, where the last 20 or 19% of the garlic produced is in China, is in California. 90% of the US production comes from California. So if you can get those percentages straight in your head, you've got sort of what we deal with. One of the problems with the producers in China is that the FDA will not allow any kind of food production to come into this country with the potential of having bacteria and molds and all of the other things that cling to an outside of a vegetable. And so they put that restriction on. So what China has done is that produces a slurry where they dip the garlic into this mixture that keeps all the bacteria and the fungus and everything else that's not garlic out. So they soak it in that, and it also inhibits growth. So your garlic will not grow. It will just crumble up to nothing. So you won't have sprouting with the garlic when it gets over here. Don't buy that. And how do you tell if the garlic that you've got is Chinese garlic or something that's grown here in the US, or at least not been sprayed with all that? The bottom side of the garlic, if it has a root to it, you can still see the root, and I'll show you that. I've got a piece of garlic here. It's not from China. If it is concave and doesn't have a root, it's from China. Now, I looked up Costco because I know a lot of folks get their garlic from Costco. Costco gets their garlic from Gilroy. So Costco's okay, but you might want to check when you go to the grocery store, if you're thinking about buying garlic, check the bottom of those cloves to see what they look like. And even though they won't sprout if they're from China, they will still, if you pick it up and it's light and there's nothing there, chances are it's the whole inside of the garlic is gone. So that's a warning. I guess that's a warning. That's a warning. And I'm not, there we go. Some of the benefits of garlic, oh my goodness. Oxidation, inhibits oxidation, lowers cholesterol, reduces blood clot formation, reduces high BP, blood pressure, antibacterial, antifungal, and more and more and more. And the link I've given you, Alice has also put online. It's from the National Institute of Health. So it's a legitimate site, and they're citing all of these benefits of eating garlic. Now, how much garlic you eat and how hot is it, and can you get it in pill form? These are all a lot of questions that people have, but our main focus today is going to be growing the garlic. So if you're interested in all of that, do a little research on your own or ask a couple questions when we're done here, and we'll certainly talk more about it. Okay, and here's just the 8 top benefits of garlic. You can see beneficial in digestion, which is true, but if you eat too much of it, you can get an upset stomach, so watch that. I have no idea how it cures earaches, but you can Google that. And intestinal ailments, yeah, it'll take care of any bugs you've got. It does reduce hypertension and cholesterol, 10 to 15%, I think they were saying. So, and helps treat cough and cold. Your grandmother was right when she said, let's have some chicken soup, it'll help your cold. It helps with the prevention of colds, but not the duration of colds. And it helps the symptom of colds, but not the duration of colds. So, and it does do a pretty good job with coughs. And if you mix it with honey, there are some tinctures, or there's some mixtures that you can get, or that you can mix up on your own, lemon juice and honey and garlic, and it does do a marvelous job. You can make it in teas, or use it for a salad dressing. But there's some mixtures that you can do that are pretty good. Uses for garlic. Culinary is the main use that we do right now. You can also use it to do some companion planting, because bugs just don't like it. It's not a fun thing for them. You can also use it in insect spray. If you spray it and mix it with a hot pepper or something along that line, it helps with getting rid of the insects. Repair glasses. I had that down, and I believe it's because if you've worked with garlic at all, you know how sticky it can be. And so they used to use it as a glue. And I think that's part of the glass repair thing. You can also, you can remove splinters with it because it's tacky, it's sticky like a glue. It'll ease cold sores, and we talked about the cold symptoms. There's just a plethora of information out there on what garlic is good for and what it can do for you. So it's going to be good that we're going to grow it because we may be using a lot of it. Types of garlic. There are a couple different types, and I've got a couple here I'll show you when we're done with this. The soft neck garlic is what you're probably going to see in the stores, and that's because the center of it is soft. It's not like a hard stick. And that was bred because it tends to last longer in storage, and it's easier to, I won't say it's easier to grow, but I think it is. And it has several cloves in it. It has up to like 20 cloves in it, depending on the size of the garlic and the size of the cloves. The silver skin, you're probably going to see, that's probably going to be the one that you see in the stores the most. And Susanville, I believe, is the most common one. It's a good garlic to grow. It's a good one to start off with. It's a long-lasting garlic, so when you properly store it, it's going to last for quite a while. The artichoke garlics, and I'll give you some samples of those when we get a little further along, has a little milder flavor, although with garlics, you can cook them in different ways and it will strengthen the flavor or make the flavor milder. So it just depends on how you're cooking it also. There are fewer cloves, but it also is a nice long storage type. Hardneck, and if you haven't run into this before, it's because you won't usually find it in the stores, and you may not find it in the farmers markets. So it's an older type of garlic, but they have their benefits. There are more a range of flavors for garlics, and they're usually a fuller bodied taste. They don't usually they don't store as long. So if you grow both kinds, you'll want to eat this kind up first to make sure that you've got garlics for storage. Well, you can read what you've got here. So that I grow a Spanish Roja, and that's a hardneck garlic, and it's a very tasty garlic. Some of them are stronger, and some of them are milder, and if you can get past the garlic taste, some of them are a richer flavor. So the flavor is going to be different it's like tomatoes. You'll have some that are richer flavored and some that are meatier and some that store longer. So same thing with garlic. Here's an example of some of the types. And trust me, this is not all of the types that are out there. These are just some of the better known ones, and you can find more different types, and depending on what you're looking for, you may gravitate towards one or towards the other. And you may not find them here in the Northwest. You might find them online. The Roja is one of the ones that I use because I like the robust taste of it, and it's an early garlic. It tends to mature quicker than some of the others. I tried a new one this year called Shandong, and Shandong I found, and it is a Chinese garlic, and it is an early garlic where most of them will tend to ripen, or it's time to pull them about July something. This was ready around the 1st of June. So there are early ones out there that if you want garlic early enough, you can get them. Enchilium is my favorite. It's a soft neck garlic. It was developed, I believe, by Portland State University in the 70s. It has a lovely flavor to it. It's a soft neck. It stores well. That's the one I plant every year. So even though I experiment, I try and keep my enchilium with me at all times. So, and the Russian red, the reason why a lot of these Russians are early is because they don't have the climate that allows them to harvest later in the summer. They've got a more critical climate. Northern white is supposed to be real good. The Korean red, I understand if you like hot garlic, and the Koreans tend to like a spicier food, the Korean red is very hot. So, and the Northern white is also supposed to be a good one. So this is just a sampling of what we've got out there. Last year, I raised Susanville, Roja, Inchalium, and I think there were a couple others that escape my mind right now, which is an easy thing to do when I'm talking. So, growing garlic, woohoo, we're finally here. Time of year to plant. The time of year to plant depends on your climate. And in this area and at this elevation, and I'm about at 170 feet, so that's anything up to 500 feet, you can pretty well say, okay, that's my climate. I tend to plant towards the last of October. Now they say wait till the first frost, but around here you may not get a frost until December, and then it comes down hard. So I usually put mine in last of October, and I have my space ready because I know where I'm supposed to put it for next year. So you have to do a little pre-planning. Where am I going to plant this garlic? So by the end of October, if you're doing gardening, your summer garden is done and your winter squash is pulled and you're ready to put in anything, anywhere. So prepare your spot where you're going to put it. I tend to put my garlic with my onions and leeks and shallots because they all require the same watering, the same fertilizing, the same environment that they all require. So I put one bed with everything in it. Now I've read somewhere that you don't do that because the diseases from your onions can spread to your garlic. And if that's the case, then so be it. But I tend to put them all in one spot at one time. So use your judgment, do what you want to do. But I do rotate my alliums to about a 3-year rotation. So I have enough beds where I rotate every 3 years. If you don't have that, one of the things you can do is remove the soil. If you have a pot or something smaller to put it in, remove half the soil and put in new soil. And that will help keep diseases out and refresh the soil and keep you going. Fertilizing, you need a loamy, sandy type mixture. It has to be fairly light. I'll tell you that garlic does not like clay. And the first year I was up here, I didn't have any garden spaces prepared, and we moved in October, and I thought I got to get my garlic in. So I stuck it in some planter boxes, which I learned later were soil from my yard, and they grew, and I had quarter-size garlic. So little bitty cloves out of that garlic bed, and I swore at that time I'm going to do better. So we created some beds for it, and I had much better garlic. They like a loamy, fairly rich soil. If you think about what onions like with their shorter roots, they're heavy feeders. So the garlic, and I'll show you some roots here, can get roots that are much, much longer than the onions, but they still like a fairly rich soil. So compost, aged manure, anything that you want to put in there to plant your garlic, they're going to really like that. But make sure it's a loamy, sandier mixture. So watering, well, by October, God willing, we'll have our rains upon us. And if we don't, we got more problems than just watering the garlic. So by October, when the rains hit, you're going to have plenty of water for that garlic. So don't worry about it until spring. If things tend to dry out, then they'll need some heavier, deeper water because those roots will be developed by spring and they'll be reaching down and they'll be looking for some good moisture. So don't worry about watering until spring. And then if we have our normal spring rains, I've never had to water in the spring until about May, June. And after that, it's the normal watering, deep watering a couple times a week, and you should be good. We talked about soil. Good drainage is the main thing, compost. And please, folks, keep it weeded because the weeds will suck the energy right out of those plants. So if you have issues with weeds, which I do, make sure you keep pulling those weeds and get them out of there as soon as you can. As far as wintering over, and should you put mulch on it, the recommendation is that you mulch your garlic when you set them in with a light mulch with either chopped up leaves or some kind of straw or something that's fairly light. I've never done that because I'm just too lazy. By the time I get my garlic put in, it's enough for me to get my garlic put in. So, and I've never had a problem with even our harsh winters burning my garlic or ruining it. And a lot of the things that you read will say, well, they'll sprout in the spring. No, they'll sprout in the winter. Here, they sprout in the winter. You put them in and a couple of weeks later, you'll go, oh no, they're coming up. Oh my God. No, that's not a bad thing. They're just perfectly fine sending their little shoots up. They like where they are. So leave them alone. Put mulch down if you feel that it's needed or it worries you, but they should do perfectly fine at this elevation. Full sun. Oh yes, they need the full sun. 6 hours of sun, please, if you can do it. Now, I'm totally surrounded by trees and they may get a couple hours of sun in the wintertime, poor things, but by spring when the sun is starting to rise up a little higher and my deciduous trees allow for the sun to come through, they do fine, but you'll need at least 6 hours of sun. They are sun loving. 4 inches apart, 4 inches to some say 6 inches. I do fine with 4 inches. If you look at the bulbs and they're, a couple inches in diameter, then that gives them another inch or so between them. So you want at least 4 inches to be able to have them grow their girth, so to speak. Tips 2 inches deep. In other words, plant them 2 inches deep from the top of the bulb, not the bottom of the bulb. So, and if you're obsessive compulsive, you can take a ruler and measure 2 inches. I just take my finger, which I know is a certain depth, and I push those cloves down into the soil until the soil reaches the top of whatever I think is 2 inches. And Bob's your uncle, they're good. Storing garlic. When you harvest your garlic and you harden it off, which is another process, you need to store it in a dry, cool, dark location. Now, if that is an outside building that's fairly dry, that's good. The garage tends to be a little warm and a little light. But see if you can find don't put it in the refrigerator. They'll try and sprout. Try and find a cool, dry, dark location, about 50 degrees if you're thinking of how cool is cool. When you harvest, I'll back this up a little bit. When you harvest, don't try and pull the bulbs up by the shank, by the leaves. Try and get a spading fork or something underneath them, because they'll break off at the leaves. So I learned that the hard way. Once you've pulled them up, put them on some kind of screen in a shady area so that they can, knock the dirt off, so that they can dry out for a couple weeks. And that will harden them off. They also need a little bit of time to develop their flavor. So if you harvest them in July or 1st of August, which is normal around here, they'll still taste like garlic, but they will take a couple weeks to fully develop their flavor. Also, if you harvest them gently and don't bruise them, you shouldn't smell anything but maybe a very light smell of garlic. You won't smell much at all. So we'll talk a little bit more about harvesting in a little bit. Harvesting garlic, and here we are. See the picture on the right? Those are something called scapes, and it's usually the hardneck garlic that develops that solid core seed head that comes up through the middle. Remember, these are older variety of garlics, so that's what they do. And the newer ones, the soft neck garlic, were developed not to have that, among other things. But you can actually eat that, and it's delightful, and they're easy to harvest. When they get up to the point where they're making their first turn, because you see where they're turning over, they're making their first turn, snap them off at the base, and then you can chop them up and do a stir fry, and they'll taste like a very light flavor of garlic. Most of the time when I'm in the garden and I see this, it's too late. They'll make a full circle with that seed head, and by then they're woody. So most of the time I don't get to do that, but I will pinch off the seed heads, because what that does, either harvesting the scapes or pinching off the tops, it allows the garlic to have all the energy to the cloves that you want to eventually harvest by yourself. Green garlic, you can harvest garlic in the springtime by one of two ways. You can either pull up the whole bulb, which I don't do because I want those cloves, and use it like a spring garlic scallion. It'll be milder in flavor and it'll have a single bulb. They haven't developed out to cloves yet. Or you can take one of the leaves, make sure it's still green, and take one, don't take the whole thing. Take one of the leaves off the plant, take it inside, chop it up, and stir fry it. And it has a light garlicky taste, and it's like a vegetable. So the leaves are also edible. Also, the seed heads on these hardneck garlics. Now, occasionally the soft neck will develop one, so don't freak if that happens. But the seeds on the hardneck garlic, once they fully develop, are called bulbils. And you can take those and plant them in about a 6-inch deep pot and have them develop over the next year. And what that will do is that second year, they will turn into a single bulb garlic. If you have it done again for, I guess that's the third year coming, or the second year of growth, excuse me, you will have a head of garlic, like a regular head of garlic. The benefit of that is that those seed heads will not have been planted in the soil, so you won't have the soil-borne issues that you might have with other garlics. And like I said, I've never run into any of that, so it's okay. The other thing with that is, if you're going to grow them commercially, which I have friends who do that, I envy them, they have land. You can, the seed heads that you'll get, the little bulbils that you'll get, can be up to like 50 to 200 seeds. So very quickly, instead of just using the cloves to grow your next garlic, in a couple of years, you can have a couple thousand garlic plants very easily. So those are some things about the bulbils. They're also edible. You can crack them and put them on salads and stuff. If you're really into garlic, go for it. Anyway, before you harvest your garlic, when do you harvest your garlic? What's a good time? When you see the bottom 1/3 of the leaves dry out, then it's probably time to harvest the garlic. Now, me with my different varieties, I'll see them dry out on some varieties and not on others. So I'll try and harvest the ones that are early varieties first and leave the others in the ground. Stop watering when you see that, or stop watering when you think that the bulbs are fully formed. And the only way you can really tell that is to pull one if you think they're fully formed. The other thing that I do occasionally is I'll push my finger in around the bulb and see, okay, I can feel the clothes developed. It feels like it's going to be a good bulb. I'll go ahead and pull them now, or I'll wait a little bit. So you can pull one if you want, or you can try and put your finger in around there, or you can wait till the first leaves start to dry out. Brush off the dirt, not a hard thing. Trim the roots, because those roots are going to be long. I got one here, I'll show you. Store in a cool, dry area, like I said, 50 degrees. And as we said before, the soft neck stores longer than the hard neck. Ooh, that's a lot of information. Okay, tips with garlic. Hang on. Chop for 10 or 15 minutes before cooking and put it to the side, because what it's got to do is develop the allicin, which is the compound that when you chop it, there are two compounds that merge and produce the allicin, ALLICIN, I think, compound that actually, that's where you get the garlic flavor. That's where you get the garlic smell. That's where you get the garlic benefits, not until those two have actually merged. One of the things I do is if the garlic is sprouting, starting to sprout, which I grow enough garlic where they start to sprout, I freeze it and I separate the bulb until individual cloves. I don't peel it, I don't chop the root, and I put it into a Ziploc bag. And when I go to use it, I take it and put it out on the counter, and it's going to be turning to mush, but I just squeeze it out of its little casing, and I've got fresh garlic in my dinners. So that's one way of preserving it. There are many other ways to preserve it. Do not preserve in oil unless you really, really, really know what you're doing, because there's certain process that you have to go through. And preserving in oil done incorrectly can give you botulism, even if it's only for a couple days. So don't do that. Read the flyer that's online if you really want to do it. But my advice is there are other ways to preserve garlic. Don't even try that one for a while. If you want to chop it up and put it in oil and save it for 24 hours, that's probably fine. But beyond that, no. There's also roasting or preserving garlic so it turns black, which has a lot of benefits to it and taste. There's also preserving it in vinegar, and the acid in the vinegar will keep the botulism out. And I have a friend who gave me some of the garlic preserved in vinegar, and it is lovely stuff. It changes the garlic taste a bit, and it preserves it. And it's wonderful on fish and chips, and it's wonderful in salads. So do your research on that one. And garlic will pick up different tastes as you cook it in different ways. And here's what I was talking about if you have a hot garlic and you want it milder, here's some ways to do it. Roast the garlic and it's sweet. It doesn't have the fire. It doesn't have the strong taste. And spread on croissants or a crostini, not croissant, a crostini, a little roasted bread. It's wonderful. If you long and slow cook your garlic, like in a chafing dish, which is what we got at the restaurant, it's soft and it's warm and it's lovely. And you can spread that on toast. If you fast cook it like most people do with a Chinese dish or stir fry, it'll be more sharp and pungent. If you large chop it whole, you won't get as many breaks in that garlic, creating the allicin as you would with a small chop. So large chop or whole, you're going to have a milder flavor. If you eat it raw, you're going to have a real bite to it. If you crush it or small chop it, mince it, you're going to have a more solid bite to it. It'll be more garlicky. Places to buy garlic. Oh my goodness, there's a whole lot of places to buy garlic. These are just some of them. You can Google garlic and it'll show you many, many places to buy. But we found ours at Sagawa Nursery, and I got there too late one time to get my garlic. I got there in October and they didn't have any left. So start checking now. You can hold it over until October. I take that back. Start checking in September. They should have it then. Farmers markets sometimes have it. Be aware that if they tell you it's just garlic and it's very large, it's probably elephant garlic. So that's a leek or a cousin to a leek. It's not true garlic. Local farms, there's farms that around this area and up in Blaine and down in Clark County that will sell garlic at their farms, and the Vancouver Farmers Market, I believe, sells a lot of garlic too. So those are some ideas of where to get it. If you can't find it, talk to me. You can also, if your store-bought garlic starts sprouting, that means it's live. Stick it in the ground and see what happens. And they recommend that you get garlic that is tested for any diseases or any of that. And if you want to go that route, then go to some of these online places where they'll tell you that it's been tested. If you find garlic that doesn't smell right or that's moldy, don't buy it, don't use it, don't eat it, just pass it by. So there's a lot of thought on that. And thanks for listening. And here's how I braid my garlic. And I braid it, that's inchlim, I think. I braid it so that there is air between it. So you want good circulation when you do store your garlic. So it has the ability to not have mold and not have the nasties that build up with just packing it in. So